It's always helpful when you can start with an establishing wide, and we got lucky, and that's exactly what we were doing on this project. So we started with this entire wide of the scene, and that was just showing the entire staircase. So I walked through Justis, the DP, and we had our plot and we had our plans as to the lighting setup. So after a walkthrough, we got to rigging all of the lights up here. And with indie stuff, you got to keep our fixtures smaller. We had to keep our power smaller, and we'll get to that later on. A handful of C-stands, a couple combo stands, and then, a handful of stingers and some milk crates and cardellinis and miscellaneous rigging clamps, stuff like that, just in case I need to come up with something on the spot. So you kind of have to be really conscious of what you're going to be doing, and sometimes you got to get scrappy if you got to get scrappy, you know what I'm saying? In a nutshell, a run through of this lighting setup that we had. We started with our god light, our big light, which is going to be lighting up a good chunk of the scene, which was this aperture 600C, which we had way up on the top level of the stairs. And this was just acting as this sodium vapor, this urban source that was just casting as an edge light, creating some shadows and some texture, and just bringing up the level in the scene. And all of our lighting in the scene was really motivated off of these actual existing urban vapor sources that you can see trickled throughout the scene. So then after that big source was done, it was delivering this big warm backlight, but we wanted to add a little color separation as well. So one more edge light we added was on this Amaran F22C, which was just a matte light that we just had coming from frame left. And that was just to give a little bit of edge on her hairline, on her shoulder line, just to separate her from the background as well. She's lit up. We could talk about this light coming from frame right as our key light. And we used what may be my favorite light in the moment, this new Storm ADC. You can see this hard source was coming through the trees and creating this texture, a little Branchiloris action here. And that was all that we did for this establishing scene. Sometimes, less is more. We wanted this to live in a dark world, so it's, we didn't want to overlight it. We tried to come up with some other ideas, but we were happy with the product that we had, and the night was escaping us, so we had to just keep cutting away here and move on. So that gets us into these mobile light movements. And this is something that I do on every single shoot. Once we move into the tights, I go to my Infinity bars. I've got the 4-light kit of the 4-foot ones. You can see that I wrapped this light in some fabric, which is some unbleached muslin. This is something that I do a lot with these bars. They're soft as they are, but to cut down some of the sheen, sometimes I'll just wrap these in some unbleached muslin just to give a little bit of a softer harshness to the light, if that makes any sense. And I've found that just using some scrap muslin that I get from the fabric store is a great solution just to cut down on some of that sheen that the light's going to give you. And we're just taking and augmenting that vapor that's up there, that edge light, and we're just going to wrap it around a little bit more, because otherwise she's just going to be living in darkness, and we still want a little bit more of kind of like that look of what's going on. So that's just what we're lining up for right now in the close, assuming I'm still mic'd up. And instead of just making a huge scene like with moon or big sources or whatever, we're augmenting a lot of like these natural practicals and just kind of motivating, or just kind of keeping those as our motivation, and then just augmenting just with adding in some pops and pools of light just based off of the blocking of our moving talent. The fun thing about shooting in a city like this is we're all battery powered. So we had everything running off of the Aperture EcoFlow. So between that and like the built-in batteries with the Infinity bars, everything was battery powered. There were no generators because we had to be quiet where we were in the city. And it all worked out. It was kind of a fun challenge. To touch on the crew size of this, we had, I want to say, about 10 people throughout the entire crew. It was just myself as Gaff and Tanner as Grip. We had the director, which was Mason. We had the DP, which was Justis. He was also his own AC, so there was no camera department. We had script supervisor, which was Mel. And then we had another PA and producer as well. So probably sub 10 bodies for the entire project here. So again, this is touching on kind of that smaller indie thing. With indie stuff, you kind of got to be forgiving. You can't get lost in the rabbit hole of making the perfect lighting setup. I think it's something you got to be mindful of, is like, hey, I've got a crew of 2. We got to keep it moving. We can't set up and break down all of these big setups. So you got to be forgiving and quick and smart with your light sources that you use, and not do things that are too big that are going to drag you down. And that's exactly what we did. This indie stuff is so fun. I love narrative projects like this. I love on the fly, these fast moving films as well. You kind of hit the ground running and you've got a few hours to be in and out. And I love this stuff. It's always it's always a challenge, and you run into these fun obstacles and problem solving. So it's a really small, quick scene, but it's some fun vibes with the friends, guys. We're just shooting movies. That's what we always want to do when we grow up, is shoot movies. Listen, guys, that's the video. Love you. Like, share, subscribe, tell your grandparents about me, and make sure to catch me in the next video. I'm gonna go break down because Tano's busting his ass right now.